You're listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a podcast dedicated to solving the billing issues and gridlock facing the healthcare industry, presented by ProChant, hosted by Chuck Ellis and Rachel Schools.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Chuck. I am the marketing director here at ProChant, and we are going to be talking about bad habits with Infusion billing and how to fix them. And that's going to be with our resident Infusion billing expert, Tina. And I'm going to turn that over to her. So, Tina, when you're ready, take it away.
Hi, guys. So I'm Tina Ratliff. I'm the pharmacy reimbursement manager here at ProChant. I have 25 years of experience in pharmacy billing. Of course, I have to say I don't know everything about infusion billing because I always joke with people that no one does because it changes every day. So I've run a billing business of my own and also done consulting with both software companies for billing systems and just going into people's offices and trying to get them on track and get things streamlined. And these aren't in any order of severity. They're all pretty bad habits. But bad habit number one is using unnecessary manual process with existing software. Right? You want to make sure to take the time to learn your software. I don't know how many times I've gone into offices to help people with their billing process. And I go, oh, well, you can do this and this, and you don't have to do any of that. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know how much time I spend doing that? So utilize your software company and their training and make sure that you are really doing things the easiest way and you're not manually doing something that the system can take care of itself. Right? Manually calculating drugs. So a lot of goes back to the software. A lot of softwares used for infusion billing will auto calculate drugs as long as you put the information where it needs to go. So when you set up your billing system, if it has a place to store billing units, make sure you populate them there because a lot of systems will calculate those units on its own. And when you have somebody manually calculating them, one, it's time consuming, and two, it leaves room for human error. So you could be overbilling or underbilling a drug and not even realize it just because you might have had a little keying error when you're keying it. So utilize that to kind of keep away from those human errors. You want to set up your system to automate processes. So you want to make sure in your system, and of course, this goes back to learning your system. There's a lot of process in your systems that can be automated where you don't have to do a lot of manual things. And some of these automated processes will allow you to kind of take away that human error aspect, and you'll start to see that your claims will pay much better. You'll start seeing once you start putting that in place, you'll see a huge improvement. And also, you really want to make sure that you lock your systems down. So you don't want just anyone who comes along to be able to add things into your system. So like if you have contract information in there, you don't want to give just everybody the ability to make changes because you kind of lose your grasp on it. And once it becomes really mucky, you won't trust it anymore. And you won't use it the way that it should be used. So you really want to make sure that you have a couple people who are responsible for updating certain things. Maybe it's a doctor record, maybe it's an insurance record, and that just anybody in the office can't just do that. Copying previous claims. This one is scary because you really want to start a fresh claim each time. Some of the systems have the ability to copy a claim that's already out there. And sometimes, you are giving them the exact same thing you might have given them before, but there are going to be times when that is not the case. And it's really easy to make that copy of a claim and just change the dates and oopsie, that we didn't give them this much drug this time, and to kind of get that wrong. And this is one of the things, if you copy claims, you really make it too easy to incorrectly bill units. So some of these units, once they're calculated out, can be so high that really by looking at them, you don't really know if they're right. You just know that, oh, it's going to be a high number of units, unless you get your calculator out, and you're not going to really be able to figure that out. So copying previous claims, it makes it really easy to make that kind of mistake. So there might be some new data on the new claim. So when you're copying an old claim, say you have some type of authorization number or some type of claims note in there, if it's copying that information as well, because I always say it, anytime something defaults with something in a field, people tend to look it over. They tend to just not even look at that field because it's filled out, right? So you might be sending a claim with an old off number that isn't for that data service. You can just be causing yourself denials that you really don't need. So it's really best, even though it might seem faster, it's best to start fresh each time you do a claim. Overbooking revenue. So the finance people hate this. When you're reporting revenue, sometimes we don't see what happens down the road. So when you're reporting revenue, your company is basically saying, this is how profitable we are, right? Sometimes you might not even be profitable on certain things because your revenue isn't booked appropriately. So always try and use your fee system in your software to load your contracts so that you know that the prices that you're putting as your expected revenue is really accurate. Because anytime you have people, again, keying revenue saying, oh, this code pays this much, they might have seen, it pay that on a claim. Really, that's not what it should pay. So now you're under or overbooking. You want to use best claims correction practices to avoid duplicating revenue. So basically, this would be if you have to send a claim back to the insurance company and you have to generate a new claim, let's say it has something on it that you can't just edit. Maybe it's a locked financial transaction. And so you're going to have to create a new one. You really want to use good practices with that claims expected amount because you don't want to duplicate revenue. You've already received revenue for that in another period. So you just want to be really careful of that. For example, if you're making a new claim, you'd make that claim and not if you received a partial payment on the items that are already paid, you would make sure that your expected was zero because you're not going to get additional money. So you don't want to overbook that line items, expected. And you really want to look at your reports and things like at the end of the month and make sure that you're using the proper process because you're going to create false expectations. So if you send your finance people, your revenue report and it says your revenue is $500,000. And really, if you went back and really picked it apart and you realize it's actually closer to $300,000, that's a huge difference. They're going to be expecting you to produce that $200,000 and you're not going to be able to. So that's another reason why you don't want to set false expectations. And number 4 is missing information in your billing system. So like I talked about before, those contracts are super important. It takes away you probably want to look at your billing office and say, what are we manually keying in our claims? Are we manually keying prices? Are we manually keying modifiers? What are we manually keying? And then maybe even get with your software company to say, hey, can I automate any of these? And they can help you. So you definitely want to do that. And same thing with the contracts. Make sure that you're getting everything you can out of your contracts. I know some systems will allow you to set things like what's billable, not billable, what requires off, what needs special documentation. Use all of that. Even if it's tedious to set that stuff up, I promise you, it will pay off in the long run for you. If you think about some of those things by setting them up, let's say authorization, you're not sending things out with no auth. It's going to prompt you for an auth. The billable, non-billable, it's going to take away the guesswork for a biller. Right? It's just going to come over that way and they're going to see, oh, these things aren't billable. I can't bill for them. But it's really beneficial. So you really want to take the time to fill those out. Oh, get rid of paper charts. So I think that a lot of offices have already been doing this and some for a very long time, but I'm always still shocked to find there are some out there that keep running into that don't. They have a filing cabinet. They don't have their records in the system. I actually went to work for a pharmacy like that. They kind of brought me in and I worked there for a while trying to help them out, get them streamlined. And they just had filing cabinets. And so even if it's a big project, like it was for us, we're like, who are we going to pull to scan all these things into the patient electronic medical record? And I actually just went and got some college students because it was pretty simple. We brought in some college students and they were there temporarily for the summer. We brought them in and they uploaded all those things that summer. So just find a creative way to maybe getting yourself some help to get that done, because I promise you again, having that stuff at everybody's fingertips is so useful. Think about how many times you would have to go to the filing cabinet to pull a chart because you have a patient on the phone. You go there and the chart's gone and you're like, who has Mr. Chart? It's just, it becomes a mess. So it's really nice to have that at everybody in the office's fingertips. Ensure a uniform system for our processes so all parties have access to the latest information. So one of the big things that I find is communication. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. Communication. So one of the constant problems I see when I go into pharmacies doing consulting is, well, we didn't get this authorized because the pharmacy didn't tell us they got a new order and we have to build this different per diem code. Or this was a new drug that was put in. It didn't have HCPCS units. Now we've underbilled it drastically. All of those things, you have to sit down and develop a form of communication. Here's all my scenarios in which we are going to need to communicate back and forth to make sure our claims get paid, and then develop a process. Who's going to be the responsible party for informing this and how are they going to do it? And make sure you iron all those things out. So that will really help your billing team. And then also doing things like making sure that everybody is updated on maybe a new process. Maybe Medicare has made a change or a provider has decided that they're going to require AW now and things like that. That information gets throughout everyone. Sometimes I find that those types of documents come from insurance companies and then they kind of just get thrown in the trash by the person who's going through the mail. So it's really important to make sure that all of that information gets out to everyone. And the uniform processes really help too. So it's really hard to manage something when everybody's doing things different. So coming up with standard SOP for your billers really helps, because if you have them all doing stuff in a different way, it becomes really hard when they're on vacation or whatever, someone to step in and work their accounts and do their work. So it's really a good idea to have all of that stuff, a process that everyone follows. Following outdated guidelines. All right. So outdated practices can also lead to unnecessary complications in your process. So example of this, and I'm sure a lot of people don't do this as much anymore because everybody's kind of gone to electronic claims versus paper. I see a lot of times where I go in the office and I'll see someone with a stack of paper claim forms on their desk and I'll say, hey, what are these for? And they'll go, oh, those are secondary claims that I got to put at EOB and mail them off. And I'm like, oh, why don't you send those electronic? Oh, we can't. So they're using an outdated process. Yes, years and years ago you couldn't, but you can now. And almost just tons of payers will allow it. So here we are taking our time to do extra work because we're using an outdated process. Following up on payer changes to ensure that accurate to the latest terms and process. So I cannot count how many times that I have gone to offices where I say, hey, how come you're billing this way? How come I'll just use this as an example, splitting your per diem days for this payer, knowing that you don't have to do that anymore. And they'll say, oh, well, they require this and they won't pay it unless we do this. And I'm like, have you tried it? Have you tried to not do it and see if they'll pay you? Because, some of this stuff changes. And the problem is, again, it kind of goes back with that whole sending information through the office. They'll change a process and no one will know, and they'll just do it forever. They'll still pay you if you take an extra 10 minutes to bill your claim and split all those things out. They'll still pay you, but they would have also paid you if you didn't. So you want to make sure that you're always on top of those things. Anytime a payer has a process that is time consuming for you or that's driving you crazy, make sure to follow up to find out, because they won't tell you that, hey, did you know that you don't have to do this? They won't. They'll just let you kill yourself and do it for years and years. So you always want to make sure you're using their latest process guidelines. Dating system notes so you can detect old information. This is a big one too. So a lot of software systems will have like little pop-ups to warn you about things, right? And sometimes those pop-ups will come in and there'll be something in there that says this payer will not allow this HCPCS code. And then you don't bill that code and you bill some other code. And then you find out that that note was like from 2012, right? And that note doesn't even apply anymore. So it's always important anytime you're updating something, anytime you're putting a note to give someone else information and you're anywhere in your system, you always want to initial it and put a date. That way, one, if someone questions the information, they know who to go to. And two, if it's, very old, they can research it and make sure it's still in effect. Ban the term, that's the way we've always done it. That's the way I've heard that. If I told Chuck, if I had $1 for every time I heard a person tell me this, I would be a multimillionaire because everybody uses this term. The other one that I get to that we really could have put on here as well is that's the way I was taught, right?
We are creatures of habit. It's true.
Yes, and it's the devil we know, so we just keep doing it, right? But there might be better ways to do things. So you got to have someone that will come in and say, you know what, is this the best way we can do this? Should we look at this process and make sure that now that we've been doing it so long this way, that this really is the easiest and best way that we can do this? So, and I know sometimes I've even had companies that say, well, we know we should do it this other way, but our people are really comfortable doing this way, which tells me that they have some people who aren't crazy about change. And there's at least one of those people in every office, right? So that you have to use creative ways to say, hey, how about you do it this way? If you want to keep your old stuff here, do it like the way that you've been doing it. You get to look at it, make sure it matches and it's going to work. Great. But you're going to have to do it this way. So yeah, definitely you want to ban that because because something is the way you've always done it doesn't mean that it's the best way, and it doesn't mean it's the way you're always going to do it. So yeah, definitely that term.
So everybody, thank you again for joining us. If you're on YouTube, hit the little bell so you know when we've posted something new. We're trying to post at least once or twice a week on there now with new information that will be helpful with running your back office systems. So again, feel free to use the chat if you have any questions or comments. But yeah, if you have any questions directly for Tina, you can email her at tinaR@prochant.com. Or they can find you on LinkedIn, can't they, Tina?
Yep, you absolutely can.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been a delight having you. And we're doing these webinars once a month now. We're kind of alternating between HME, DME, and Infusion-based topics. So if you haven't yet, sign up for an email to our newsletter over at prochant.com, and you'll be able to see what webinars we have coming up and all the other great content that we have to help you get out of the back office and back to doing what you love best, which is helping patients and running a successful business. So again, thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a presentation of ProChant, a wholly owned revenue cycle management service dedicated to serving HME, pharmacy, infusion, and other healthcare providers. Learn more about us at prochant.com.